So today I want to talk about my favorite childhood video game franchise and just my overall history with it and what it means to me. And yeah, got hard copies of all the wow, I can't count, 5 different PS1 Crash games. But yeah, so starting off talking about my history of this franchise with Crash 1. Now, my very first memory of this game is one of the earliest memories I have where I had to have been at least 3 or 4 years old, one or the other. Like, I actually have a theory. So when people talk about like when you first gain consciousness and stuff, like when you're a little kid and like you suddenly start like remembering everything and you're like aware. Well, like when I try really hard to think about when I first gained consciousness, one of the earliest memories I can think of was seeing this game when I was super little. I remember me and my parents and my cat. Hopefully, he's not about to get in front of the camera. All right, buddy. All right, good boy, bud. All right. Move you for a second. All right. As I was saying. So my earliest memories of this game was, visiting my aunt and cousin and uncle in Scranton, PA. And yeah, I live in PA, and I remember I was asleep. It's a long drive to Scranton over from where I live over in Pittsburgh. And I remember waking up. I remember walking up to my my aunt and uncle's apartment, coming in, seeing them, and visiting, and then in their living room this game was on, and I remember just being absolutely enraptured and just suckered into what was on the screen. Like, I remember the very first level, like with like the beach and like the couple of boxes, and then you go up the steps, and then like the music changes, and it's like more jungly and stuff. And I was like, it was funny because like my aunt, who like obviously like could tell how much like how into this I was and how much I loved watching like my brothers and my cousin play it. Because this actually wasn't the first one I played. The first one I played was actually Crash Bandicoot 2. Because my aunt, probably about a month later, maybe a little sooner, she sent in the mail, gifted me a copy of this game when I was around that time. And I will never forget because, yeah, this was the first one I played. I'll never forget because I remember our PS1 was not hooked up. I remember my mom telling me, it's like, all right, I want to take a nap. After my nap, I'll set it up and you can play it. And I remember like bugging my mom over and over when she was just trying to sleep. And I was like, I want to play Crash. And she was just like, no, you're going to wait. Like, no, wait till I finish my nap. So eventually she finished her nap. She set it up for me. And I distinctly remember with this game, like, I remember walking like in the very beginning when you go to Turtle Woods, the first level, and in Crash 2 when like you're in like that little room before you exit the door and you walk into the level. I remember being in that room and just playing around with the controls. And I remember as a little kid just like slowly figuring out like, how the physics worked and all that, and like moving around and figuring out this does that. And obviously it's something you don't really think about now because, we all know how games work. But that's something I remember very distinctly when I was little. And then I remember, yes, buddy, cat. But, yeah, I remember my first memory though, so that's my earliest memories I have with Crash 2. Now, when it comes to my earliest memories of Crash Bandicoot Warped, I remember, this is another thing, it's super vague, and I don't remember it entirely, but what I do remember is there was some friend of our families that we were visiting around that time when I was really young, and I remember when we visited, we went into their game room in the basement, and their son and my brother were playing Crash Warped, and I remember like the medieval level, and like I remember like something that left a distinct impression on me was like the little cutscenes before you start the levels with like Cortex and Uka Uka's like heads floating and like the portal thing. And I remember just that imagery just like really stuck with me when I was little. And then I remember also like I remember well, at that time, seeing them go through like I think the first prehistoric level, and yeah, this is literally like as I'm talking about this, there isn't really any real point to the video other than me just kind of recalling and talking about my earliest memories of Crash Bandicoot when I was little. Because, when you're all little, like, you're not good at games at all, obviously. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older, until I was around, like, 6 years old, that, like, you start to, your brain's developed enough that you start to figure out how to play games effectively. And I remember that's when I was starting to, like, actually, like, try my hardest, like, beat games. Because I remember around that time, so when I was younger, I never owned Crash 1. I only saw it at my cousin's back then. But I remember bugging my mom to buy me a copy of this off of eBay, because I didn't, I never had Crash 1. I had memories of it. I remember seeing it, but I never beat it, and I really wanted to get it and beat it. I remember when I was like 6 or 7 years old, Mom bought me a copy of it, and I'll tell you what, any of you who've played this Crash 1 know that Crash 1 is an absolute doozy of a game. Like it is significant. I can't stop burping. Excuse me. It is an absolute, it is one of the, most people will tell you it is one of the hardest platformers, 2D or 3D, that you will ever play. And that's true, because I remember when I was younger, it took me a long time to beat it. And I remember distinctly, like, the absolute joy I felt when I finally beat the game, And I remember, like, I ran to my brothers, and it was like, I beat it, oh my god. And, like, meanwhile, my brothers were, like, playing, I don't know, Twilight Princess or Mario Galaxy on the Wii in our basement while I was playing this in our living room on our PS1. And I remember they were just like, oh, cool, whatever. Yeah, like, when I was little, like, my brothers, like, and me and my brothers, like, when I was a little kid, I was an absolute platformer junkie. Like, for a good portion of my childhood, all I really played was, like, any sort of platformer, and it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I started to branch out and try other types of games. But on to the next game and my earliest memories of it, Crash Team Racing. Now, Crash Team Racing, when I think back to the first time I saw this game, I remember it was at my great aunt and uncle's place, and I remember seeing my cousin and my brothers playing it in the living room. And the thing in this game that, for whatever reason, the thing I remember the most when I saw it for the first time was the spinning, like the 3D model spinning Wumpa fruit in the corner that, like, if you have like 10 of them, it like increases your max speed. I don't know why, but that specific thing I remember distinctly, like that sticking in my brain when I was little, which is really funny because obviously that's such a minor detail. But when I think back on, like, when I first saw this game, what stuck with me, I remember seeing that, and I actually never properly got around to playing and completing this game till I think it was around like 2010, 2011. And so most of, like, my childhood, like, I think I've mentioned this before, like, somewhere, that, like, I was very much, like, obsessed with retro games, and I didn't really pay attention or care about the newest stuff out at the time. It wasn't until way later I started to keep up with that type of thing. But, like, I remember we had, like, a retro used game store open up pretty close to us, and I remember this was one of the first games I bought there with my allowance money at the time. And I remember playing this, and it's funny because when I think back when I first played this game, like, back then, so this is something that's probably going to blow some of your minds. I went through the entire single-player campaign in this game, never properly understanding the mechanics of the boosting in this game. Like, like the whole boost thing where, like, when you're drifting, you, like, have to hold drift, and then you tap L1 before the meter all the way fills up, you get, like, consecutive speed boosts. Like, somehow I managed to beat the single player campaign without ever knowing how to use that properly. And obviously through the internet years later, I learned how to do that, and, I went through the game again, and now when I play it, I take advantage of that. But I remember playing this game and, like, never knowing that was something you can do. And it makes sense, because I remember I found this game really stinking hard, and it's because I was not taking advantage of a crucial mechanic that, you know, we all know that this game has. But yeah, that's... by the way, this is just my opinion, but I would rather play this than Diddy Kong Racing. Don't get me wrong, Diddy Kong Racing's fantastic, but I think this is just a bit better. But on to the last PS1 Crash game, Crash Bash. Alright, so my memories of Crash Bash, I remember with this game, me and my best friend growing up, so I remember my best friend, kind of like us when we were growing up, he had all of his video game stuff in their basement. It was like they turned it into like a game room. And I remember when my brother and his brother, our older brothers, were playing like on the Wii and stuff, we would play our own games. Because I remember he had like this portable DVD player screen. Like it was like a portable DVD player that had like a screen attached to it. And I remember it had like an AV input thing, and they had their PS1 hooked up to it. And I remember this was a game that me and my best friend would play a bunch when we were younger. Like, we never got super far. Like I think like when I was younger, when we would play this game, like the farthest we would ever get was we would beat the first boss. Like we'd beat Papu Papu, and we would at least get midway into the second batch of mini games in the second warp room. But yeah, and to this day, I have actually never completed this game. And honestly, after all the YouTube videos talking about how much of an overwhelming nightmare completing this game is, that's kind of always deterred me from trying to. But yeah, but despite that, I still have good memories with it, and maybe one day I'll go ahead and try to beat it, but I don't plan to anytime soon, because unfortunately, this is a game that's actually an accurate representation of it being worse than how most people remember it as a kid, and I think most people would agree with that. But yeah, now, other thing I want to talk about is I feel like when it comes to Crash Bandicoot, particularly in the original trilogy here, there is, you know, like two ways to play these games. There's beating the levels, beating the bosses, getting to the end, credits roll, hooray, you beat the game, you're done. And then there's the 100% journey. For those of you who have grown up playing these games and have actually 100%ed any of them, you will know Crash 1 is significantly harder to 100%. Particularly because the only way to 100% the game and get all the gems is getting all the boxes in each level, but getting all the boxes and being the level without dying once. And as a lot of you probably know, this was something that was changed in the Insane Trilogy, minus whenever it's a color gem level. When it's a color gem level in the Insane Trilogy, like, you have to do it in one life. But no, I remember though being really young and just being absolutely determined to beat this 100%. And I remember I eventually did it, and it took me forever, but I did it. But this is the one Crash game I would say you can... I feel like regardless of whether or not you choose to 100% it, or if you choose to just beat it any percent and just get to the end, you're still getting, like, I think, a good full experience. But with that said, I feel like when it comes to Crash 2 and 3, or Warped, or whatever you want to call it, I feel like the 100% journey makes these games so much better. Like, I don't know about you, but I think when you play these games and you just beeline to the end without getting the boxes or gems or anything, they kind of feel underwhelming. Like, they're not that hard. I mean, Crash 1, as I've said, is significantly harder, and I think because of the difficulty, Crash 1, just any percent, feels a lot more fulfilling. But these games without going for 100% feel like you're missing so much, because, like, as you guys probably know, when you go for 100%, you try to get all the boxes and gems, there's a lot of, like, alternate paths and, like, hidden levels and stuff that you have to do, and there's just way more content you get out of them. And that's why I personally think that, like, the best experience for Crash 2 and 3 is going for 100%. With that said, I do not blame you for using a guide on the internet to do so, because there are some pretty dang cryptic hidden gems in these games, but yeah, Crash, guys. Crash is just one of those franchises, like, particularly just the PS1 versions, where when I go back to them, it just feels like an extension of home, if that makes sense. You know, like, I come back, I feel it's just pure video game comfort food for me. Like, I've beaten them a million times, especially Crash 2. Like, I'm willing to bet during the pandemic, I 100%ed this game at least 20 different times. And I've done it so much that I'm pretty sure I can 100% this game in just over 3 hours, if not less. And because of that, it remains my favorite childhood game. But yeah, guys, that's my memories and recollections, and, you know, thinking back on my favorite childhood video game franchise growing up. And if you have any of your own Crash Bandicoot memories you want to discuss and talk about, I'd love to discuss it. I'd love to hear about it. But anyways, guys, catch you in the next one.